I think one of the things that we constantly struggle with is the rapid speed at which technology continues to evolve.
There we go.
The volume of technology, the velocity of technology, the variety of technology. It is just so much. We all think that we already have our hands wrapped around technology, but it's constant, rapid, vast expansion, whether it is big data, social media data, networking, broadband, it doesn't mind what it is. At this point in time, the buzzword seems to be more around big data and around mobility and around connectivity, but it's understanding how we use that more efficiently, not as a tool, but how we actually have to redefine real estate and the transaction in its totality.
Super, thank you. So the question is, what is the one thing you think needs to be done right now in our industry? Tamara, what are your thoughts?
I think one of the major concerns that we have in California is homeownership sentiment. Good news in California is that the market is up tremendously, but the bad news is that the sentiment's down, and public policy has is having their way with us in homeownership. We have had major recovery. We now have 75% of our sales are equity sales, whereas we were down to 15% equity sales in the really bad part of our market. We've got construction issues with 160,000 units needed every year. We're only up to, maybe we'll be lucky if we have 70,000 new units built this year. The international buyers are helping us tremendously, immigrants coming in, for two reasons. One, they don't trust their government, and two, they believe in homeownership and the American dream. But our first-time buyers in California, we in 2013 had 28% of our market was first-time buyers. And that is awful. It's a very, very scary number for us. And I think that the normal market would be anywhere from 50 to 60%. And throughout the U.S., it was more like 60%. But I have concerns with that, with the sentiment where our first-time buyers are going to be going. They're looking towards leasership. They find that to be a much easier, better route. And I just feel without first-time home buyers and home affordability helping us, it's great to have a good, healthy market. We're all doing a little bit better, but the homeowner affordability is a huge problem, and home ownership at its core is, I think, extremely threatened.
Okay, thank you, Tamara. Amy, how about you?
Hi, everybody. Kind of a different idea, but educating the heirs apparent of the existing real estate companies that are out there. We have an aging of the real estate population, and we have a disconnect or a low number of young people really embracing the industry as their future job. So finding people, whether it's the sons and daughters of our brokers or it's people who show an interest in the company, and creating a program that's not just leadership, but it's managing a real estate company, because as half of our population starts thinking about retiring, we don't want them to lose the infrastructure of their companies. We want them to be able to continue. So that is something that I'm personally working on with a team. That's one idea from me.
Super. Thank you very much. Todd, how about you? You're obviously in a hot new area with data analytics. What do you think needs to be done right now?
Well, I think it's important to realize that technology is moving at a really fast pace, and if you're a brokerage or even an association, if you're trying to keep up with that pace or stay ahead of that pace, it can be very challenging. And the area where you have the greatest value is where maybe you need to focus the most. So instead of trying to develop the most innovative technologies, it's a little bit more important to just know how to use those technologies. And as a real estate agent, being that trusted advisor that helps guide a consumer through the transaction instead of being the gatekeeper to data or the person with the best website or things like that, I think is kind of the safest path forward. So that focus on your core value proposition is really important.
Super. So we've got one of our first questions in. So Stefan, this is for you, and it's with the retirement of baby boomers in association staff leadership. Are our Generation Xers and Ys ready to take on AE and CEO roles?
I think every generation does step up to the plate, but I think the baby boom generation has dominated for such a long period of time that we have not really maybe either allowed or permitted the generation which follows us to step up to the plate, or that generation has felt that they can remain in the shadows of the existing generation, or they maybe have had less interest in the activities that the previous generation have felt as important. But as Amy said, there is unquestionably a growing gap between what we perceive leadership to be, what the new generation perceives leadership to be, and what the current leadership is. So we have, as Amy said, an education problem. As Todd said, we have a speed time to market problem. And in all of those cases, I would probably say we're not ready for it yet, and we need a lot of work to be had.
Thank you. Todd, I'm going to jump to a question that we wanted to ask you about, because I'm getting several tweets on the topic of data strategies, data analytics, and one of them is, what do realtors need to stay relevant in the era of big data? So, I mean, what are you doing with, with client scoring, data aggregation? What are you doing right now with your time, and what are you thinking about?
Well, the biggest priority for the association is to look at the source of data that we have the most of, and that is about our members. There's a lot of value just in knowing more about the membership and what they're doing. To give you an example, one thing that could be a direct benefit to all members is to know the aggregate activity of members in any particular area. So there's things besides sales that could be a leading indicator of where the economy is going or where the housing market is going. Things like how much activity are agents doing in pulling CMAs or using their MLS or RPR, or how often are they showing homes through CenturyLock and Supra. And so that there's lots of little data that measures the activity of agents, and in aggregate we can see, wow, showings are really picking up in this particular area. If we could provide you with that data, I mean, a lot of agents already kind of instinctively know this stuff, like I can tell that the market's picking up, but boy, if you could show that in real data to your consumers, it would be very valuable. So we're looking at all the different things that not consumers, but what our members are doing right now, be it advocacy, be it in their business, be it in their engagement with the association, and seeing if we can build a holistic view of that, and that activity can lead us to give some great insights back to our membership.
Super. A note for the audience, raise your hand if you're following on Twitter and you've posted some questions. See the hands? If you're sitting near one of these people and you want to ask a question, grab them and they'll tweet it out, and we'll make sure it gets to our panelists, okay? Amy, question for you. We hear lots of conversation about what the big brokers are doing. What is on their mind right now? Where do they feel this realtor organization is headed?
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. Couple of things. Because of the influx of agent testimonials and reviews, we are looking at reevaluating our customers' experiences. So we're going back and using data that we have available to see what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. I mean, big data is everywhere. So we're working on creating kind of like a checklist, a benchmark, and then trying to make sure that we're aggregating all of the testimonials and reviews so we can monitor using programs like client surveys and giving the agent population the ability to fix things, as it were, if they can. So that's one of the things. I have a couple, if that's okay, Elizabeth. Are you ready for me to just rock and roll through this? The other thing is, we're coming out of such a long stretch of hard market. Tamara was talking about what's going on in California. Well, the market's better, and basically everyone has their nose to the grindstone, and we're really thinking about making money and fixing making sure our systems are working. And at the same time, if we were smart, which many of us were during the downtime, we took a good look at our internet look and feel and how we manage and convert internet leads. So we were able to put some better systems in place, because we have to get ready for not just the next gen consumer, but we have to be able to recruit the next gen realtor. So all of those things have been tied together, And those are some of the things. Hold on, I had a couple of other things here on my list for you. We're reevaluating our how to make our offices profitable, and we have systems and tools at a very granular level to help us do that, and being able to figure out what needs to be done to help companies who maybe have held on and maybe need to be brought in as a merger and acquisition with another company. So a lot of that's going on. And also making sure we have the right culture. To Todd's point, there's so much data out there that can be read and used to make sure that not only do we have the right culture for our existing salespeople, but for the new generation of agents and the next gen consumer. So, you know, the next gen consumer is not just millennials and Gen X, but we had a really surprising survey that we just did on the boomers. And the boomers are not going away quietly. I mean, look, we're not leaving the associations, that's for sure. We're holding on. But there's going to be a whole new wave of property purchases. And if you Google, get a chance to Google our survey on the boomers, you might get some interesting perspectives.
Okay, super. Thank you, Amy. Tamara, you have been active with the YPN group, not only nationally, but also, I know, in California. What about this organization turns on, no matter what age they are, what turns on new volunteers and what turns them off?
It's interesting because I think as we're talking about association leadership in the coming years, Stefan's question and Amy hit on it, getting an inclusive environment for the next generation of realtors. It's I think one of the challenges with the turnoff is NAR is such a large organization that oftentimes it feels that it's a broadcast organization, and it's hard to engage maybe the younger volunteer members to get involved. And I think if you look at generational data, Gen Y is a very, and I'm Gen X by the way, but Gen Y is a very collaborative group, and they want to collaborate. But I would say that that holds true for any generation, that we're all pretty much collaborative and we want to be involved. But the biggest challenge or turnoff is when you feel like you're not part of the greater purpose, and being able to have an environment where you have the sense of purpose and the meaning of work because you're directly involved in it. RPAC, for example, I think a lot of the YPNers are starting to understand it, and they're willing to put their money where their mouth is as long as they're a part of it and they feel a part of the greater purpose and they have more meaning in what they're doing. The biggest turnoff is feeling like you are in an audience and you're being talked to. And I don't know that that is a generational thing. I think that any of us feel that way, that we want to be included and part of an inclusive collaborative group. So there's barriers and there's challenges to create that type of environment, especially within a large organization.
Thank you, Tim. I think those are definitely good points, that people are people and they like to be included no matter what age they are, where they come from. Mark, Lesswing, welcome. Hi, nice to see you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Mark, what right now do you think, what are you doing right now that is moving the organization forward?
Okay, we're investing in what's called APIs, or streams of information, not only on the membership side, but also pushing through the MLS community to move to a different basis than just taking copies of data around and moving to a channel of information. So APIs is actually where we're pushing all of our efforts right now, and this is good for the association, it's good for membership, it's good for MLSs, and good for the industry.
Super. So this may be for anybody here, but I'm going to direct this particularly to Todd. Todd, we hear big data thrown around all the time. It's such a big concept, if you will. I mean, how do you break it down and make someone understand that so they know what we're talking about and where we're going?
Well, it's funny because the name big data is kind of a misnomer. It's actually lots and lots of disparate little data that you put it all into one big pile and suddenly patterns start to emerge. And so over here we notice that, for instance, a member is attending local events, and then over here we notice the same member is becoming more of an advocate, and then over here we notice that that member is contributing to RPAC or using calls for action, and suddenly we start to see this pattern of all these little things that they've done over time, and say, you know, this is the type of pattern that leads to someone that is becoming a bigger advocate. But it was a lot of little things that if you look at separately, they don't seem to mean very much, but when you look at them all together, you can identify a pattern. And then what we can do from there is use that as a historical, and so go back and see 4 years ago, where was this particular member, and now today, where are members that are in a similar position, and perhaps we can then give them the right marketing or the right communications to encourage that same path that was successful before. And that could be for advocacy, it could be for training, it could be for helping to develop you know, rising stars in the industry. There's certainly a lot of new agents that either wash out or become successful. If we could figure out what that pattern is to where they become successful, it'd be great to offer products and services that help more people go along that path. So it's a lot of little tiny things. When you add them all up, suddenly a pattern emerges.
Okay, super. Amy, you've got a comment on it?
Yes, I do. Thanks, Elizabeth. Big data is available in many different facets. Because I'm involved in the education part of my company, one thing that I watch is I use a company called Knowledge Advisors, and I'm able to watch people who take series of courses and literally watch if their productivity goes up. I also leverage the data that the big brokers have available to them and track people's production. So I can see if training that we're delivering is valid. To me, that's a great use of big data, because most times when there's an education course, you get a survey, and in the real estate world, there's 3 levels of a survey. Level 1 and 2 is, did you like the class? What'd you think of the instructor? But a level 3 and level 4 survey, which I'm allowed to do with this kind of data, I can see when there was behavior change. So, you know, gone are my days of when I hear, the room was cold, we hated the donuts, they were stale. I raised my production as a result of this training. So big data is very important for education.
Very cool. Stefan?
Elizabeth, I would like the audience to not see big data as access to one set of data or one data point or a database or information that may or may not been gathered at some stage. I think the importance, and Todd picked up on a point which I would elaborate on, data is now millions of little small data sources everywhere, any place. We can now capture data almost anywhere, and we are now finding the ability to integrate. And it's that fusion of personal information and business information. If anybody thought that they still have privacy, please understand it is gone. You'll never get it back.
Good point. Mark?
Yes, I'd like to point out that if you actually look around the association itself, and you're doing big data as in a predictive way for membership itself, I think there's great potential in looking at the data we already have. We don't have to collect a lot of new data at all. It's actually going back and looking at the areas of RPAC and education, as Amy was talking about here, and looking across the areas of you already have touch points, and pulling those together themselves is a wealth of information as far as building models, as Todd was talking about earlier.
Very good. Thank you, Mark. It's just a reminder, if you're getting on Twitter, the hashtag is NAR9, so you can kind of continue in to tweet in your comments. Stefan, you've got a big summit coming up this week, your T3 Summit, which you started a few years ago, which is definitely a great gathering of industry giants. What do you think is going to be the #1 issue or the hottest topic at T3? And do you think you're going to have a conversation about what is the big boulder which might or could take down NAR? So kind of two pieces to that.
The summit is over 2 days, so to identify the top subject, I think, is impossible. There is a large number of subsets of very important stuff which will be discussed, from creating a business-driven business to finding those struggling boulders, as somebody just said, that NAR might have to address or overcome or try and discuss, to all the complexities, as we said earlier on, with regard to the speed, the volume, the veracity, the variety, the volume, the complexity of data in general, connectivity in general, the fact that the mobile phone is not just a device which we all use, but it is so proficient at the moment that they're estimating that just this year, 1 billion people will buy a smartphone, just this year. So we have such a redefinition taking place of society in general, and as almost everybody has said, at such a speed that we have not seen before, that we are as leaders. Tamara said that we were busy in California. Everybody's so busy with the activities which they're busy with, we don't have time to focus on those things that matter, because there isn't time to do that. The T3 Summit allows us once a year to sit down as leaders from different companies, different associations, and try and help each other through those complex things.
Exciting. How many people have you got registered to come?
About 225 CEOs and leaders across the industry, about 42% of the Swanepoel Power 200.
Very exciting. And if for some reason you can't attend, pay attention to the header or the Twitter hashtags while it's going on, and I'm sure we'll get to hear some of the great comments from the event. I'm going to direct this possibly to Amy and Tamara. Tamara, how do you use, what is the best way associations can use social media? And how should an association leader use social media?
I think that is the question, is how do we reach our members and how do we engage them? And it's like an age-old question, whether it's through snail mail or now social media. I think part of it, and part of this addresses whether it's a generational thing or not, is being really clear and concise. And I think one of the things is that we need a better communication of strategies. So I think that a lot of our members, they see posts, they see things that we're asking for, but what's in it for them? Why should they be involved? Why should they respond? Why should they say what education event that they like or what advocacy event they like, when they don't necessarily feel like they're part of the bigger organization? Oftentimes you hear a member, whether it's local, state, or national, say, you, the South Bay Association of Realtors, you, the California Association, you, the National Association of Realtors, and they forget that they're a member. They make up this part of it. So then we reach out to them and we try to get them engaged, but they're not part of the bigger conversation. They're not part of understanding what the strategy of the organization is or what the needs of the organization are. So I just think that we need to do a better job of knowing, defining our strategy, and being able, whatever that might be, whether that's an education strategy, like professional development's working on GRI right now. So if that's the conversation that we want to have, it's involving more of our members in that conversation, letting them know what the strategy is, getting input, and then getting them more involved and more engaged. So I think you have to break it down into micro topics, or perhaps it's a macro topic if we're talking about syndication. So our members, they see it as them versus the organization, because we're not doing a good job of, and I say we, as in all of these different associations, are having a hard time defining the strategy in chunks that our members can understand so that they can engage. So social media, we can use that to get them involved. We can use that. I think people want to be a part of this purpose or the mission. So the banners that happened about a year ago with the Code of Ethics. That was a fun way for people to get involved and feel like they were a part of the bigger cause. And maybe there we could have sought out more information about ethics and professionalism, and we could have used that as a way to garner more insight from our members as well. So I just think that we need to do a better job of articulating our strategy on different issues and getting our members back involved. And social media is a great way that we can start with that.
Super. We'll go to Amy and then Todd.
Elizabeth, I took part in a strategic planning session for the Westchester County Board of Realtors. They're now the Hudson Gateway because they combined a bunch of their boards in New York. And they did something very interesting. They brought thought leaders in with very disruptive topics that spoke to not only the strategic planning group, but everyone in leadership, all the directors. And then the next day, they broke it down and let everyone talk about what the topics were and that were of a concern to the association. And as a result of that, the directors and the strategic planning committee realized that maybe they really weren't listening to what the members' problems and issues were. And when they came back together, they narrowed it down. There were things that they hadn't been thinking of. Advocacy, of course, grassroots, education, and member services. What is it in for me? So as a result of that, they created a strategy of communication that involves social media, and I believe it's more effective. So from my perspective, to Tamara's point, what is the pain points for the members, and talk to them about topics when it's important to them. Now, not all of them are going to be on Twitter, but there are things like private Facebook groups. So you can either involve them at the national level, like through YPN, or through local, and it's a media mix, but you have to listen to your constituents, and I just wanted to share that. That was very eye-opening for me.
Oh, thank you, yeah. Todd?
So there's a couple of things. One, this week we did a call for action through Twitter to basically raise awareness about patent trolls. And, one of the things that we did behind the scenes was the government affairs and communication staff emailed everyone within the organization that said, hey, if you have a Twitter account and you agree with this, then we would love for you to retweet it. And so even though the Realtors Twitter account has like a many followers, the idea was let's get it to a lot of different people, including some of the people in leadership, and coordinate to some extent let's get this started. And so many people started tweeting about it at once, and then of course many more people saw those tweets and started tweeting about it as well, and suddenly the topic was trending on Twitter. And so it wasn't just that one person put this out there and then virally it just spread on its own. It's okay to work as a team, especially in the association, and get things kind of started. So there's the broadcast aspect of it to get messages out. I don't have numbers on it. It wasn't my project, but the other side of this, though, and Amy spoke to this a little bit, is listening. And there are going to be times when the association is moving, well, in almost any situation, the association is moving in one direction, and a certain percentage of the membership is opposed to that, right? I mean, nobody agrees on everything. And so being able to go online and just listen to the opposing view, one, can help you identify what objections you need to get beyond, and two, it may tell you that maybe this is not the correct path for us, or maybe it is. So being able to listen to those issues, not necessarily even to argue or to fight online back and forth, but just using social media as a listening device is incredibly powerful.
Raise your hands in the audience if you participated in the Twitter call to action so Todd can see. Raise them high. Wave them. There they are. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Mark, you had a comment on this.
Oh, yes. I just wanted to point out here that reaching out to members themselves is not actually just a function of social media. It could be that we've not been organizing ourselves to actually listen enough. So although social media is a good listening channel, it in and of itself is not the end-all. In fact, we have to refocus ourselves to actually understand where members are And that's actually why we're doing a lot of work in the analytics area to be able to understand that. It's not just about social media itself, but it is a good vehicle to do that. But I think we have to start listening to members as part of our organizational challenge.
Well, and kind of on that topic of listening to members, Tamara, you were able to participate as a Rethink instructor, and Stefan, you are now facilitating strategic planning this year for NAR. Lots of changes are proposed. The state presidents and AEs are in the room. They just got back and heard some of the beginnings of the structural change PAG. Are our members ready to accept change in our boards and associations so we can remain strong and viable for the future? What do you all think?
I'll just say that I think our members are begging for change. It's whether or not the leaders that have been leaders within the organization for a long time are as willing to embrace it. When I facilitated Rethink, the themes and the things that I heard over and over again were that we need to change. Things need to change. It cannot go on the way it's been happening. The other thing was members don't feel listened to. It is the engagement factor. That's huge. They want to know that their association knows what they need and is willing to take action on their needs. And having such a big organization or so many small organizations, locals and states, a lot of our members feel that it's nearly impossible to change because it's so hard to steer a giant ship. And the other thing, as far as a major theme went, was this conversation of youth. And it's funny because I'm 37 years old. I don't consider myself super young anymore, but I'm one of the young ones, I guess. And I think that I've been embraced by our association, but sometimes it's like you YPN, you're young and you're the future. And I think that you have to look at all the generations and know that all the generations, it's not that young is the future, they're the now. They're conducting business now. We're all part of the now. So the three things that stuck out for me from Rethink were that we need to engage more youth in our industry. We know that our consumers are getting younger for the most part. The engagement factor and change. Change was the big one. So I think our members are dying for change. It's just the powers that be or the leaders that have been running the organization, are they willing to adapt and change? That's always been kind of what the thought was, or the question that kept coming up at Rethink.
Okay. Stefan, what about you?
Elizabeth, the complexity is that we today live in a society that has 6 generations alive, of which 4 of those 6 generations make up the membership of NAR. Each one of those generations are approximately 20 years apart from each other, and therefore their thinking, their approach, their needs, their wants, their decisions are all significantly different. And because we are the largest trade organization in the world and have over 1 million members, we have a reasonable mix out of each of these categories. We might be slanted at the moment more towards the baby boomers, but we have a mix of all of them. And as a result of that complexity, almost any decision that we take is met with excitement as well as with resistance. It's met with fear, it's met with trepidation. We have to try and also learn to not get distracted by every new toy that is announced every day on a news service or in a shopping mall. If we set down a plan and we focus effectively on the implementation, which is not something we as an association has done very well, and it's nothing to do with NAR, it is the complexity of a large, multi-state, local, federal, driven organization with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of board members and hundreds of associations across the country with diverse opinions. It is hard. We need to try and see if we can somehow streamline the decision-making process within NAR. Otherwise, we will battle with this for many, many more years to come.
No, thank you very much. So, this is a question I've heard before, but for all of you, what has changed in your thinking in the past 3 months? Is there something that's changed in what you used to think was maybe the direction full steam ahead, and now you've said, you know what, I've been thinking differently about that? Todd, let's start with you.
Well, you know, I don't know about in the last 3 months, but just to relate, when I originally joined NAR, I was actually encouraged to be somewhat of a change agent, and I changed the way that the association communicated with its members. There were a lot of people who felt like what I was doing was somewhat disruptive. And there was a frustration on my part that things didn't change as fast as I wanted them to. When I left and went to Trulia, I experienced the ability to change very, very quickly, but the changes didn't always last. And I think Tamara said it's a big ship. Well, the thing about having a big ship is you also have a lot of momentum, and you can cross the ocean in a big ship. If you spend all your time changing back and forth, you're not really getting anywhere. And the great thing about the association, what I eventually learned, and I really appreciate now that I'm back, is that there is a ton of momentum, and it is moving in a good place. And the changes that you need to make, really, a small change over time can be really big. And so, when we try to tackle this, it's not so much like how do we turn the boat around, it's like how do we make just small changes that can affect us in a positive way and have them be lasting changes that are successful.
I read an article in Forbes yesterday, and it's a little bit scary because it talks about the fact that and I agree with you. Sometimes we have to make small changes so that we can rechart our course or just make adjustments. But this article talked about how it actually talked about real estate and brokerages, how they're just making so many little changes, that as they're becoming more elastic, these little changes are stretching them out to the point where they're so fragile that one little boom and they're gone. So I kind of think we need something bigger. We need a big change. I don't know what the big change is, but I know we need a big change. I feel that it's not a lot of little changes. We're making ourselves more fragile over time. Sorry.
Good point. Amy? Amy?
Yes, Elizabeth, I can't hear you, but now I can. Okay.
Okay, here you go. So what has changed in your thinking in the past 3 months?
It's almost what keeps me up at night. It's that next technology company that's, working in their garage. Have you all seen the commercials of all the great companies that started in a garage? I'm thinking, what other company is creating a technology that can come between us and the consumer as so many others had? Because we're still, to Todd's point, trying to figure out still how to use things. So really, I've kind of taken a stand on everything has to work together. So many of our sales associates buy pieces of technology and systems, and nothing works together. So they're at a frustration. So I'm thinking maybe have to lower my standard a little bit of some of the tools that I would like to see, because there's all these silver bullets all the time that come up. Maybe it's one system that's totally integrated that can free a sales associate up so they can actually go out there and sell real estate. It may not be the best, it may not be perfect, but everything is in one place.
Couple of claps there for that, Amy, from the audience. Mark, what about you?
Yes, I'll tell you what's it's really been encouraging in the last 3 months. I've been at this only slightly longer than Todd Carpenter's been at it. Trying to get the new ideas into the organization. And what I've been faced with for over a decade has been small fixes done at a governance type level. But I'll tell you what's really encouraging to me, and actually why I'm losing sleep over it because I know it's going to be a lot of work, is that I think people are starting to realize that a lot of the small fixes are not going to be good enough, and they're kind of resigning themselves to the fact that we're at an opportunity to make a couple big changes, and we're probably going to have to do it real soon, within 18 months.
Okay, so Stefan, I'm going to ask you the same question. I'm going to give the audience a chance for one more round of questions. So if you've got something else that's burning, make sure you tweet it in. But I'm going to put the panelists on the spot here. And we have the 2014 President-elect Chris Polychrone in the audience who, is getting ready here to lead the organization. I'm going to wrap up with our panelists, and I'm going to ask you, what is the one thing that you would like him to be focused on? So you all be thinking of that, but we'll go to Stefan and then the audience, and then we'll come back to our final question. So go ahead, Stefan.
Last 3 months, last 6 months, probably the same answer. The fact that with every single announcement that we hear, not just in real estate, but outside real estate, we come to better appreciate that nothing is sacred anymore. Everything has already been, and if it has not yet been, it will be digitized, it will be scanned, it will be put into data, and you will have access to it. And probably you will have a little bit less control than you would like.
Well said. Well, and you kind of mentioned that, and Amy, you alluded to this. There's so many people who enter our space who have never practiced real estate, but they know that this is one of the largest industries on the planet, and they're selling us stuff. How do we know who to listen to? Any of you? Mark?
Yes, okay, so...
you go first, Mark.
Everyone's quiet on that one, yeah.
Okay, who do you listen to as far as what really works? In reality, you should be listening to yourselves. You've actually built these businesses where nobody else has. You've actually interacted with people. You actually go on the line and put yourself out there. So in reality, the answer is within yourselves as the leadership of the organization. There is nobody outside who we should be following, because nobody knows this business as well as you do. But it's just recognizing the fact and having the courage to understand that you do have the answers if you get a little bit introspective on the whole thing and not try to follow what somebody else is doing.
Okay, Amy.
I think putting together a true business requirements strategy, taking a step back and looking at all your tools and hiring someone who understands how to talk geek speak so you can understand it. So a geek with personalities, a consultant who can come in, who knows the real estate industry but understands technology and can look at your systems and infrastructure and tell you where the holes are. So for example, make a list of all the technology that you have. One of the biggest, of course, is your website. Is your website truly engaging today's consumer? Do you have all the best bells and whistles to compete with some of our third-party disintermediaries? And then from the website, how does it work for your sales population? Are you giving them the tools so they don't have to go out, and are you communicating to them that they have the tools? Again, it's so hard. We actually had a company tell us that they had everyone bring in their business credit card statement, and on average, their agents in their company were spending over $150 a month on a $29.99, a $39.99, because they went to convention and someone said, just one commission pays for it. Well, you have to take back control and educate your agent population as much as we can, because they are independent contractors. But you need someone to come in and, honestly listen to your agents, because they'll try stuff, and if it doesn't work, they're going to stop using it. And I'll be quiet now. I could go on forever on this topic.
I can chime in.
Yeah, please.
I think that I would put it into 3 sentences. Normalcy is overrated, innovation and technology is hungry, and re-engineering is inevitable.
Can you repeat those? What were the 3 sentences?
I think normalcy is overrated. I think technology and innovation is hungry, and re-engineering is inevitable.
Cool, thank you. Stefan, you're getting ready to work with strategic planning. What's the goals of the committee this year? Where do you want to head with that group?
I think we need to make sure that we have everybody's input across the country, much wider than we did before. We have to expand our thinking out of our traditional, as we often like to say, inside-the-box thinking. So association worlds are notoriously limited in their proverbial viewpoints. So we always look at outsiders and we say, why are they so dynamic? There's no reason that NAR can't be dynamic as well. Mm-hmm. And then we have to focus on implementation and execution. We are great at talking. We are reasonably good at thinking. We sometimes are not that good on implementation and execution. If we can focus on that, and we can do it a little bit faster than the very long time cycle that we often take. We have a very complex structure. We need to clean up our structure and make it more competitive with our competitors if we would like to compete with our competitors. Otherwise, if we are happy with what we are, that's fine.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to ask this to everyone. What is the one thing that you think NAR should be focused on right now? What's the big issue that should be taking up, top of the list right now? Todd.
Well, I think there's a lot of talk right now about the portals and listings and syndication and all of those particular topics, and they're good things for brokers and agents to consider on their own. But I think that the real strength of the association is in its advocacy, and I think that kind of doubling down on driving that advocacy and making the realtor more of a local advocate is very important right now. That's the area that we have no competition in. That's the area where we can really excel, and I think that's kind of the future of the organization.
Tamara?
I think we've got a lot of mega issues, but I'm going to piggyback Todd's advocacy and home ownership, because I think that we've got, and I know NAR is really on it as far as the threats that are coming our way with public policy, but we have such poor results with our calls to action and our red alerts to get our members involved. We just can't seem to engage them so that they understand why these are such a threat to their business. So part of the advocacy strategy needs to be involving our members in a better way so that they're involved. And I just think that we could be partnering more with homeowners too. So if realtors are the community folk and we're the ones that are out and about in our communities, we should be advocating with the homeowners. I mean, realtors are supposed to knock on doors for business. That's like what we're supposed to do. So why aren't we knocking on doors and telling our homeowners that there's threats to homeownership right now and we need their help? So social media is a way that we can do that, but I think sometimes good old-fashioned knocking on someone's door, picking up the phone and calling, and one realtor asking another realtor, asking another realtor, and then asking a homeowner, getting us all involved on these major public policy issues that are threatening the sentiment of homeownership, I think is huge.
All right, thank you. Mark.
Yes. No, on that advocacy point, I think it's really important because it is a function of what realtors do. They're really good at talking to people. It's not the technology piece. And do not panic as to what happens in the market here, because real estate still cannot move without what realtors do every day. things will work themselves out. So don't make any bad decisions or panic decisions. That would be my advice.
Great. And Amy?
I'm Elizabeth. I'm looking at it on the Twitter feed, and I'm just going to read a couple of tweets that kind of have my sentiment and my point. Chris Polycron. Chris, you said, are our members ready to accept change in our boards and associations so we can remain strong and viable? And then Peter Galbraith, if I said your name wrong, I apologize. You said, how can we make way for the next gen of leaders without losing the institutional knowledge, and will the long-time leaders make way? To me, that is a topic I'd love to see Chris work on during his time in office, help us put together a plan that allows us to corral the knowledge of the leadership that's here now, but be able to bring in that next gen leader and train them in a way that makes them effective.
Super, thank you. And Stefan, we'll wrap up with you.
I gave you my strategic planning ideas, so let me give you something tangible or maybe slightly controversial. I would say let's reduce the NAR's National Board of Directors from 900 plus people down to 12 business, like-minded, focused people that can take decisions quickly, like you would at any large public company that focuses on profitability.
Wow.
Stefan, what was the number? You cut out right when you. Huh? 12.
Well, pick a number. It doesn't matter if it's 10 or 12 or 15, but bring the board of directors of NAR down from a unmanageable 800 to 900 people down to a. If you can run Realogy, if you can run Zillow, if you can run Apple with 12 people, you can run NAR with 12 people.
Panel once together where. I think the topic was, Amy, wasn't it, that 17 was the optimal number to run a group? And that was kind of the number. Well, the audience is buzzing with that wrap-up. We got off to a little bit of a rocky start with our technology, but I think we were able to get through and have some great comments from the panel. And I'm so thankful for everybody who participated in Twitter. But group, Region 9, we've got the Realtors of Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Kansas, and we just want to give you all a great applause and thank you for participating with us today. You can continue the conversation online. We'll be at NAR 9 for the next 24 hours. So panelists, if you want to chime in, please feel free to join us by way of Twitter. But this was also broadcast live on YouTube, and you'll have a chance to review the video or share that with anyone if you would like. But again, thank you all so much for participating, and with that, we will say goodbye from our Google Hangout and our live in Branson. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.